Ladies and gentlemen, imagine a world where your freedom fades, where simple choices become rare privileges, and where the familiar comforts of your life are replaced by sterile routines and a loss of control. For many of us as we age, the idea of moving into a nursing home may seem like a safe, comfortable solution. But what if that decision comes with sacrifices you never anticipated? What if the price of convenience is more than you're willing to pay? At 82 years old, I've experienced firsthand the harsh truths that come with this life-changing move. I'm here today to share 6 hard lessons that I wish someone had told me before I stepped into a nursing home. Trust me, these insights are essential for anyone contemplating this option, whether for themselves or for a loved one. Stick with me until the end. You may be surprised by what you learn. The first regret I want to share is the loss of independence. When I moved in, it wasn't the small room or unfamiliar faces that hit hardest. It was the realization that I no longer controlled my own life. At home, I had my routine. I woke up when I wanted, chose when to eat, and spent my days on my terms. But once inside the nursing home, I found myself on a strict schedule. Meals were at set times, walks needed approval, and simple decisions like what to wear or where to sit became privileges, not rights. It's a shocking shift, and once you lose that freedom, getting it back is nearly impossible. So ask yourself, are you ready to give up the small freedoms that make life yours? Because once they're gone, you'll miss them more than you could imagine. Then comes the feeling of being forgotten. In the beginning, my family visited regularly, and it felt like I still had a place in their lives. But slowly, those visits dwindled. My daughter switched to phone calls. My grandchildren became consumed with their own lives, and holidays that once meant something became just another day. It's not that they stopped loving me, it's that life moved on without me. Loneliness crept in, and I realized that when you're out of sight, it's easy to become out of mind. Ask yourself, if you choose a nursing home, are you prepared for that kind of isolation? Another regret I carry is the loss of purpose. At home, I had little tasks that gave my life meaning. Watering plants, making coffee, even tidying up my space. But in the nursing home, those rituals vanished. Meals were made for me, cleaning was done by others, and before I knew it, my days felt endless and meaningless. I watched others like George, who had once been full of life and creativity, slowly lose their spark because they had nothing to do. Life without purpose is a slow fade, and if you move into a nursing home, finding meaning isn't easy. Ask yourself, what gives your life meaning? Because in a place designed for ease, keeping your spirit alive requires extra effort. Then there's the rapid decline in health. I was still active and independent when I moved in, but as soon as I stopped doing things for myself, my body weakened. I stopped walking as much, and soon I couldn't get up without difficulty. This wasn't just my experience. Many others lost their strength too. Alice, an 81-year-old woman, who was once lively and determined to stay active, started relying on a wheelchair after just a few months. The more help we received, the less we did for ourselves, and the less we did, the weaker we became. If you're thinking of moving to a nursing home, ask yourself, will you have the motivation to keep moving, even when it's easier not to? Because once you slow down, getting back up isn't as easy as you think. Privacy and dignity were also sacrifices I wasn't fully prepared for. At home, I had my own space, my own routine, and the ability to do things on my terms. But in a nursing home, privacy is a luxury. From staff checks to shared rooms, even basic things like dressing or using the bathroom require someone else's assistance. No matter how kind the staff, it's hard to accept help for things you've always done alone. There's a loss of dignity in having to ask for permission for things that once felt natural. If you're considering a nursing home, ask yourself, are you ready to give up the privacy and control you've always had? Once it's gone, it's incredibly hard to regain. And finally, the hardest truth of all, leaving isn't as easy as it seems. I thought moving in would be a temporary solution, a trial run, but once I was settled in, returning home wasn't as simple as I thought. My house had been emptied. My family was hesitant to support my decision, and I had lost the strength and confidence to live independently again. The longer you stay, the harder it becomes to leave. For many, the choice is no longer theirs. If you're considering a nursing home, ask yourself, Are you prepared for the possibility that once you move in, leaving might not be as simple as you think? Looking back, I don't regret growing older, but I do regret believing that a nursing home was my only option. It took away my independence, my sense of purpose, and my dignity. Some people truly need the level of care a nursing home provides. But before you make that decision, think carefully about what you might be giving up. Life at home, with your routines, independence and choices, is worth holding on to for as long as you can. If you're facing this choice, take the time to ask yourself, is this really what's best for me? Or is it just the easiest option right now? Because once you take that step, your life will never be the same. Moving into a nursing home, often seen as a safe haven or an easy solution to the challenges that come with aging, comes at the cost of one of the most precious aspects of our lives, our independence. When I first moved into the facility, I assumed the process would be a simple transition. The idea of no longer needing to manage all the daily tasks at home seemed like a relief. But what I didn't realize then, and what I wish someone had warned me about, is how profoundly losing control over the smallest aspects of your life can affect your well-being. At home, I had my routine. I chose when to wake up, when to eat, and how to spend my time. I could decide what I wanted to do during the day, whether it was a walk in the park, making a meal, or simply enjoying a quiet moment in my favorite chair with a book. These were not luxuries. They were freedoms that over the years I had come to cherish. The sense of autonomy in these simple decisions gave me purpose and comfort. But once I moved into the nursing home, everything changed. The first shock came when I realized that my time was no longer mine. Everything in the facility operated on a strict schedule, and I had no say in it. Meals were served at set times, and no matter whether I was hungry or not, I had to eat when they decided it was time. The lights would go out at a specific hour, whether I was ready for bed or not, and if I wanted to go for a walk or do anything outside of their prescribed timetable, I needed to ask for permission. It felt as though every decision, from when I could eat to when I could rest, was out of my hand. Even more disheartening was the realization that the small, seemingly insignificant decisions, things I had taken for granted for so many years, had been stripped away. I was no longer able to choose what I wore, when I showered, or even where I sat. Each of these things had become privileges I had to ask for. In my previous life, these choices felt like my birthright, yet now they seemed like luxuries, and asking for them felt humbling in ways I hadn't anticipated. The loss of independence became more apparent in my daily routine. At home, I had the freedom to make my own meals. Cooking might not have been glamorous, but it was an act that grounded me. I could decide what I wanted to eat, how much and at what time. In the nursing home, meals were prepared for me, and there was little room for personal preference. The kitchen was no longer my domain, and instead of choosing a recipe or preparing a meal that satisfied me, I simply waited for what they served. In the beginning, I tried to adapt. I told myself that this was just part of the process. I convinced myself that I could get used to the routine, that the trade-off for being cared for would be worth it. But over time, I began to realize the emotional toll this loss of control was taking on me. I started to feel like just another resident, a number among many, not an individual with my own needs and desires. My identity, once defined by the little choices I made every day, began to blur. I no longer felt like I was in charge of my own life, and the more I adapted to their system, the less I recognized myself in the process. Once that independence was gone, I found it incredibly difficult to regain it. Every decision became harder to make, and the thought of fighting to keep some of my previous autonomy felt exhausting. I began to understand that once you give up your independence, it's not just a temporary loss, it's a lasting change. The smallest freedoms, like deciding when to take a walk, or picking out my own clothes, felt more valuable than I ever imagined. What was even more difficult to accept was that the loss of independence didn't stop with just daily routines. It extended to even bigger aspects of life. I had relied on my routines, my rituals, my comfort zone to feel like I had some semblance of control over my life. But in a nursing home, there's no room for that kind of flexibility. You live by their rules, on their terms, and the price of comfort is your ability to make decisions for yourself. It becomes increasingly clear that the longer you remain there, the more you forget how to make decisions for yourself at all. This experience forced me to grapple with the reality that my life had changed in a way I hadn't anticipated. The emotional cost of losing autonomy was far more profound than I expected. It's not just about the inability to make a cup of coffee or pick a meal. It's about losing the essence of who you are as a person. These daily decisions give us a sense of identity, and when they are taken away, you start to feel like just another resident in a large facility, not the individual you once were. If you're considering this option for yourself or a loved one, it's vital to ask, are you ready to give up the small freedoms that make life yours? Because once they're gone, you might find it harder to get them back than you ever imagined. The loss of independence in a nursing home is something that shapes your entire experience. It changes how you see yourself and your place in the world. It strips away your ability to live on your terms and replaces it with a new reality that can be far more difficult to accept than you expect. When I first moved into the nursing home, I was reassured by my family that I would be well cared for. They promised to visit often, to ensure that I would not feel disconnected from them or my life outside the facility. In those first few weeks, the visits were frequent, and I felt as though I still had ties to the world I once knew. My daughter came every weekend, my grandchildren visited, and for a little while, it seemed like life hadn't changed too much. But as the weeks turned into months, a harsh reality set in. The world outside continued moving without me, and the visits slowly became fewer and further between. At first, I didn't want to believe. I told myself it was just a phase, that everyone was simply busy. But deep down, I knew something was shifting. My daughter, once so reliable about her visits, began calling more often than coming to see me. My grandchildren, who had filled my days with laughter and energy, became more occupied with their own lives, school, work, and their growing families. Their lives were moving forward, while mine felt like it had come to a standstill. The holidays were the hardest, a time when everyone promises to come, but in the end, those promises often fell through. I sat alone in the common room, watching other residents, all of us hoping that today might be the day someone would remember us. It wasn't that they didn't love me. They did, but life just kept getting in the way. In those quiet moments when I sat waiting for a visitor who didn't come, the loneliness became almost unbearable. I would hold the phone in my hand, debating whether to call my son or daughter, but I didn't want to be a burden. I didn't want to remind them that I was waiting for a visit that might never come. The fear of seeming needy, of reminding them that I was alone, was overwhelming. So I put the phone down, and in that silence, it hit me, this was my life now. The world outside was moving, and I was simply watching it pass by. I wasn't a part of it anymore. I was forgotten, or at least I felt that way. This feeling of being forgotten is one of the hardest truths about life in a nursing home. You start to realize that once you're not physically present, it's easy for people to assume that you're doing fine. They assume you're adjusting, that you no longer need the same attention or affection you once did. But the reality is far different. The longer you're in the facility, the more the outside world feels like it's slipping away from you. Over time, I noticed that I wasn't just isolated from my family, but from the life I had built outside. The activities I used to enjoy, like visiting friends, attending social events, or even just getting out of the house for a walk, became distant memories. I no longer had the ability to just pick up and go. Even simple decisions, like choosing when to leave the facility for a brief outing, became dependent on others. I had no control over my own schedule, and that loss of control further contributed to the emotional isolation I was feeling. There were days when the loneliness became so profound that I couldn't help but cry. I missed the warmth of family, the sounds of their laughter filling my home. I missed the simple act of being able to decide when to have a visitor, to plan my own days, and to feel needed in the way that I had once been. And as the months wore on, I saw this same sadness reflected in many of the other residents around me. There was Mr. Hughes, who had once been a successful lawyer, now sitting in a chair every day, his eyes fixed on the door, hoping for a visitor that never came. And there was Ms. Allen, who used to be an avid reader, now barely speaking, waiting for anyone to talk to her. The longer we were there, the more we all seemed to fade into the background, like people who had been forgotten by the very world they had once known. This sense of being forgotten isn't just about the physical absence of loved ones. It's also about the emotional detachment that occurs when you're in a place like this. People forget the emotional needs of those in nursing homes because they assume that the physical care is enough. They forget that as human beings, we still need companionship, affection, and the reassurance that we matter to the people we love. I started to wonder if my family even remembered me the way I remembered them, or if my presence in their lives had become nothing more than an afterthought, a distant obligation they fulfilled because they had to. The emotional isolation of being in a nursing home is something you can't truly prepare for. You might think you'll have regular visitors, or that technology like video calls will help bridge the gap, but nothing truly replaces the feeling of having someone sit beside you, share a meal with you, or simply hold your hand. Over time, I learned to accept the loneliness, but I also realized that I never truly got used to it. It's a hollow feeling that lingers, no matter how many kind staff members or fellow residents surround you. For anyone considering a nursing home for themselves or a loved one, it's crucial to ask, are you prepared for the loneliness? Are you ready for the emotional isolation that comes with being physically separated from your family and friends? Because even though they might love you, once you're out of sight, it's easy for them to forget the depth of your emotional needs. And no matter how much you try to fill the void, nothing truly replaces the presence of the people you love. In conclusion, while a nursing home may seem like the safest and most convenient choice for many, it's important to understand the profound impact it can have on your independence, sense of purpose, and connection to the world outside. The emotional isolation, the loss of simple freedoms, and the difficulty of leaving once you're settled in are all realities that must be carefully considered before making such a life-altering decision. It's essential to ask yourself, is this truly the best option, or is it just the easiest one right now? Remember, the life you have, your routines, your choices, and the small freedoms you enjoy are invaluable, and it's worth fighting to hold on to them for as long as possible. Thank you for taking the time to listen, and I sincerely hope that these insights help guide you or someone you love when making such an important decision. Good luck, and may you find the strength to make choices that honor your needs, your independence, and your happiness. Thank you again for joining us, and I wish you all the best on your journey.